As we come to this time in the next few weeks, I just wanted us to consider thanks. Thanks for God. Thanks for who He is, and maybe thanks about some things that we don't often think about with God. Thanks for security. Have you ever considered the security of God and what that means to you? Next week, we're actually going to have Randy. He's going to be back up here, but he's going to be preaching next week. So Randy's going to be preaching on thanks for stillness, thanks for solitude. And then the week after that, we're going to have another one. It'll be thanks for God and more of a whole of His character and who He is. I think we oftentimes forget to just thank Him for being God. We've all been parents, right? Or several people in this room have been parents. How's that? Sorry, there's a few out there that are like, nope, not going to be anytime soon. I get that. I didn't mean to push that on anybody. But most of us in this room have been parents. When's the last time you got thanked for being mom or dad? Hey, Mom, thanks for being mom. Do it now. Hey, Mom, thanks. Not you, her. Hey, Mom, thanks for being mom. Hey, Mom, hey, Dad, thanks for being dad. We don't get that very often. But if you asked your kids, what is it about your parents that you like, would they have something? My kids would say, you let us have ice cream at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm a good dad. I'm a good dad. So in preparation for this, just be considering things like that. Because as I was thinking about this and I was having breakfast one day, I saw two pairs of older people walking in the restaurant. They were cute. I want you to know that. The ones in front, they were kind of holding hands, and they weren't moving real fast, but they were kind of swinging their arms and just enjoying one another. And the two behind them, the older fella kind of had his arm around the older woman, and they came in as a couple, and they sat down, and you could tell they were enjoying the company of each other. They were not really foreign to one another. It wasn't like they weren't sure about who the other person was. There was something about them that created a security in that foursome, but not only that created a security in the couples. He knew she was his, and she knew he was hers. There was a security in that knowledge. There was a security. I watched them all the way till they left, and they kind of joked and laughed, and I saw the two old men kind of slapping each other trying to get the bill and everything. And there's a security in knowing that you have that friend that's going to provide. Maybe as a surprise or maybe as a matter of need. I really enjoyed watching them. They were a lot of fun, but the thing that I really enjoyed the most was that when they got out of the booth, they kind of checked on each other. There was a security about that entire group that I thought was amazing and I thought could relate to us in certain ways. Just before they walked in, I was reading Job 11:13 through 20. It says, if you prepare your heart, you will stretch out your hands toward Him. If iniquity is in your hand, put it far away, and let not injustice dwell in your tents. Surely then you will lift up your face without blemish. You will be secure and will not fear. You will forget your misery. You will remember it as the waters that have passed away. And your life will be brighter than the noonday. Its darkness will be like the morning. And you will feel secure because there is hope. You will look around and take your rest in security. You will lie down and none will make you afraid. Many will court your favor. But the eyes of the wicked will fail. All the way of escape will be lost to them. And their hope is to breathe their last. You see, as I was reading that, I recognized that hope is what brings us security. Hope is one of the things that brings us security. This hope of us being able to reach up, this hope of us being able to be taken care of, this hope of us not having to be afraid, and this hope of a promise is part of what helps us have hope, because hope is a vision of the future. It's hard sometimes if we're like the wicked or to be the wicked because they can't have hope because there is no future. Look at what it says there about them. Their hope is to be their last. Their hope is to breathe their last. How scary would that be? Is if your entire hope in life was just to get to your last breath. how would that inspire you to go further, to do more, to love others? If your hope is just to make it to the end. We as Christians, we live with the security of God. We see in Job specific ways that security can affect our lives. Security in God means that we have no fear due to God's strength being on our side. We find favor in the protection of God. And most importantly, we have peace through the security of the honesty of God. You see, if we look at Job 15, in that 15th verse, we can see clearly that we will be secure and will not fear. I think we have to start with getting rid of fear. Fear is the great intimidator. Fear is the one that will take us off track. Fear is the one that will constantly tie a knot in our stomachs. And have you ever noticed that sometimes when you get afraid, if you're a little bit afraid, you can get more and more afraid? I'm never afraid if I start walking into a haunted house, but I'm always afraid at the end. Because when I start walking in, I can't see all the horrible things. But as I go further and further in, there's more and more horrible things, and it kind of ties me up and gets me a little more nervous. I mean, I may start off with my friends being like, hey, and when I walk out, I'm like, no! Because fear can be cumulative. And when we let a little fear in, a lot of fear can come out. We need to start with fear and getting rid of fear. We will be secure and we will not fear. As we approach the security of God, we must understand and have faith and just be able to say this. Are you ready? Who could actually say this in your life right now? Okay, this is a question for you to think about for when we get to invitation time, because my whole invitation is my sermon. You ready? Who in here can sit there and look around and go, just trust and have faith when you say God's got it covered? God's got it covered and you let it go. You don't think about it. You don't worry about it anymore. You don't do anything. God's got it covered. I can't. Don't forget, I'm an honest preacher. Because in my life, I have kids that are going through stuff. You know, it's really awesome when you pull out of the driveway and you get a text from your wife and it's got a picture of your son with a cut on his face and it's already starting to turn black on the side of his head. It's harder for me to go, well, God's got it covered when I'm looking at that from my son. By the way, he got hit by a jump rope at school. That's what it was, okay? I mean, he got whopped good, but he got hit by a jump rope. It's hard to look at that picture and say, God's got it covered. I can't even look at that picture and hardly go, my wife's got it covered, the teacher's got it covered, until I'm there taking care of it myself. Now I'm using that example of my son, but I have a question. Does anybody have in here in your mind right now that you can think of that you go, I think God's got it covered, but until I do it myself, I'm not going to know? Surely I'm the only one. Here's the thing. It is our faith and our security in the power of God, our faith and security in Him, that can destroy the enemy's ability to conjure worry in our lives. When we live fully in the text from Matthew, we will find that there is no longer, if you can really get it in your head and really believe it and really stand in it, you will understand there is no longer any reason to not say God's got it covered. Matthew 6:26-34 says, look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Aren't you more valuable than they are? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is alive and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore, and I want to point out, 31 says therefore. You got to know what it's there for, and that's everything before it. Everything he just talked about. Will you be fed? Will you be clothed? Will you be taken care of? That's what Jesus is about to talk about. Therefore, do not be anxious. What he's saying is everything I just talked about, don't worry about it. I got it covered. Therefore, do not be anxious, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the Gentiles seek after these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them all. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. And this has been a mantra in our house for a long time. Therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow. Tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own troubles. Our security in the power of God is found in the knowledge that the future is truly in his hands and not in ours. You want to get rid of fear? Quit being in charge. You want to get rid of fear? Let God handle it. You don't worry about it. Because let me ask you something. I'm just going to repeat something to you. By you freaking out about everything you do, can you add one single minute to your life? If you go around and you are the control freak of the year and nothing spins without your say-so, will you add a single hour to your life? Friends, you won't. The only one that has control over all that is God. So let him be in control. We are not really good at hands off, are we? But we need to try. Because security in the power of God is like a child seeing their parents' competencies. You guys, I want to point this out. We talked about the fact that not everybody in here has kids, but a lot of kids in here have kids. Do you know what's amazing about kids when they're little? They think you are all powerful. That's why my dad's always going to beat up your dad. You realize that, right? Because my dad is all powerful. Your dad cannot be. Therefore, my dad will win in the fight. I've never had to prove that. I hope I never do. But here's the truth of the matter. When we are parents, when we provide for our kids, we give them their food, we give them their clothes, we give them their toys, we give them their cars, we get them where they need to go, we get them to school, we get them up in the morning. We are pretty much their whole worlds, and therefore we become almost, forgive me for saying this, all-powerful to them. Because what do they do that we don't basically control for them? And do you know why most kids should not fear their parents? Because we love them. And we desire for them to grow and to become incredible people. And since we desire for them to grow and become incredible people and we love them, they are safe and they are secure in our care. Let me ask you something. If we can figure that out, what makes you think God can't? Be secure and knowing that an all-powerful God has everything under control and we don't need to worry about it anymore. Because when you do that, fear will roll off your shoulders, just like it does off my kids' shoulders. As long as daddy's there, it's safe. I hate it when they get older and realize it doesn't always work out that way. But I still try really, really hard. Because when worry starts to fall off our lives, we can begin to understand the strength of finding favor through the security of God's protection. The protection of God allows us to do something unique and absolutely wonderful, and I tell you guys this all the time. It is two words that I love to tell you because I think it has such an image to it. The protection of God allows us to stand firm. The protection of God is not a physical barrier. It isn't a tank that he puts around us all day long so nothing hits us and nothing does anything. What it is we are secure in the protection of God and in the truth of God that allows us to stand firm. When we no longer fear, it's a lot easier to stand firm. Do you know why people run away when something's being thrown at them? Because they're afraid they're going to be hurt. I'm not saying that's stupid. I'm saying that's smart. But if you have the protection of God around you, you can stand firm whenever anybody throws any new ideologies or insults at you. Because the truth of God is enough of its own protection. to protect you as well. We can have security in his truth. And we can have security that he will remain faithful as he gives it to us. Psalms 18, 1 through 3, it reads this way: I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. Wouldn't you like to be able to stand firm on that? I'm going to be honest with you. Has anyone in here ever driven through a sand field? Like it's basically a field, looks like it's got grass on top, but it's basically got sand underneath it? And when you do, how does that vehicle feel when you drive over it? Not very secure, does it? You feel like you're sliding, you're sitting there thinking, oh, we're going to have to go get something to pull us out. You're afraid you're going to get stuck. Whenever you are not on something secure, everything feels shaky. By the protection of God and being on the rock of his word, you can know your life will not be shaky because it's not yours anymore, it's his, and he worries about it. You don't have to. When fear is passed off, when we are secure in the faithfulness of God and his taking care of us through his strength, we can seek his protection and truth, and we can know that we can stand firm. Because the rock of our salvation is where we set our feet. Some people may ask how we can know for sure that it's true. But I have to tell you, it isn't a well-kept secret. There's nothing about it that is like, oh, the mystery's already been solved. It's been given to us. Angels long to look into it. The trick is, you have to take a leap of faith and a leap of acceptance. See, look what Paul says in Romans 1, 18 through 25. He says, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world. It's in the things he's made. So they are not without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him. But they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Therefore God gave them up in the lusts of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worship and serve the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For those that choose to perceive the invisible attributes of God, there is a wisdom and confidence that fills them. Don't overthink it, guys. If you truly believe that God made everything, look and see where he is. Don't overthink it. The love of a mother and daughter. Two friends that go out and help each other. Just simply looking at the world and knowing that the earth is set almost perfectly away from the sun so that we don't burn up and we don't freeze. It's tilted just right, so we have seasons, which brings rain and which brings dry. We don't have to overthink it. We can look at the simple stuff and go, the sun rises and the sun sets, and nobody can figure out really how other than God. I know the science of it, but I'm going to tell you, when you get down to the basics of it, it doesn't matter. Everybody still goes, I'm not sure how that part works. The smaller you get, usually the closer they get to, I don't know. And the truth of the matter is, I have a simple answer. Because I've talked to people about this before. God says he set the stars in the sky on day 4, and the light was on earth. How? You know what the easy answer is? God. I've overthought it. I've read books on mathematics that prove it. I've read all sorts of stuff. But the easiest answer is the simplest answer, and it's probably the one we ought to just lean into in faith. God. Because the truth of the matter is this: his truth stands on its own. It is evident in creation. It is evident in us. It is evident in who we are. And when we choose to reject his reality in our lives and in the creation around us, we choose to reject the truth of God. But we, as his chosen people, we can be secure in the fortress of the truth that is God, in his honesty. Because he not only creates and instills this idea of truth in the world, but the simple fact is he is the truth. Looking at John 14, 6-7, Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. Jesus wasn't a secret. Even when he was alive on earth, Jesus wasn't a secret. In Sunday school today, we looked in Acts and we saw a centurion, Claudius, who was talking to Peter. And Claudius knew about Jesus. Peter says, you knew about Jesus, the guy in Judea that was all over the place from Galilee. You knew about Jesus. And realistically, there are people who have never heard the name, but I guarantee you that's why we are alive, because we are supposed to be the evidence of Christ to a world that needs to know him. But we can only do that if we live without fear and we stand firm and secure. Our security doesn't come from us. Our security comes from him. No matter how much we wrestle with God about his truths, no matter how much we wrestle with him about his provisions for us, the rock will stand and the truth will not be shaken. Because we have the security of his protection through his truth and the security of his faithfulness to us in our lives, we also can know that we have security through the honesty of his promise. There's a great peace in the promise of God. I hope you know that. And we can be secure in his promise because of his honesty. It's part of who he is. You guys know the promise, right? The promise is Jesus. And when we grasp onto him, he removes all our fear. He removes all our anxiety. He removes the temptations of the world, and it creates a peace beyond compare. If we grasp onto him, if we throw ourselves without reserve into the honesty of God and his ability to maintain the promise of salvation, we will find peace. And I got to be honest with you, I'm kind of excited about Randy's sermon next week, because I got to tell you, in this world, it seems like peace is becoming further apart and harder to find. Most of us have a really hard time finding a spot where we can just sit down and be at rest, where we can be at peace, where we can take stillness and say, I'm just going to sit here and be still for a minute. We're raising generations that can't sit still. It's hard. And so I encourage us to take the peace that comes with the security of the honesty of God and the promise that he's given us through Jesus Christ. If we look at 1 Thessalonians 5, 1-11, it says, Now concerning the times and the seasons, brothers, you have no need to have anything written to you. For you yourselves are fully aware that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. While people are saying there's peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them as labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you are not in darkness, brothers, for that day to surprise you like a thief. For you are all children of light, children of the day. We are not of the night or of the darkness. So then let us not sleep as others do, but let us keep awake and be sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk are drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love, and for a helmet, the hope of salvation. For God has not destined us for wrath, but to obtain salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, so that whether we are awake or asleep, we might live with him. Therefore, encourage one another and build one another up, just as you are doing. It is easy to be caught up in a culture. Whether it's religious or nationalistic, it's easy to get caught up in a culture that causes us to have an almost apathetic response to preparing for the coming of Jesus again. Because the truth of the matter is, we aren't ready. It's been coming for so long. We've gotten so used to the idea of the fact that Jesus is coming back. Sometimes it's hard to stay prepared for it. My parents live in a very nice neighborhood in Fort Smith, Arkansas. They park their cars. They usually park their cars out in their driveway, and they have a good time with that. And their friends all park their cars out in the driveway, and they have people that park out in the street, and it's very nice. And everybody has always enjoyed a great deal of security from living in that neighborhood because there's security watches, there's all these other things. It's all great. Until the one night somebody came and smashed in their windows. And the cops came and told my parents, if only you'd had a camera on your garage, we might be able to find out who did it. For 20 some odd years, how old are you? No, 19 yesterday? Okay. For the reality of the matter is this. For 15 years, my parents have lived in this house. For 15 years, my parents have never had a single concern or worry about the security of their home. They have just accepted that their house was in a safe place, that was in a place that would never have to deal with things like this, until the day they wake up and their windows are smashed in and somebody looks at them and goes, well, if you'd have prepared for it, you'd have been okay. We live in a safe place. We live in a place that does not require us to be afraid of our religion. It doesn't require us to be afraid to talk about Jesus. We live in a place where we are actually granted extra benefits for being Christians. We live in a place that Christianity seeps into all the nationalism. Christianity seeps into every aspect of life. I have jokingly and one of us makes fun of me about it, talking about the Blessed shirts. If you were wondering who I was pointing at, it was Denise Hike. Anyway, but she teases me about it. Because we always talk about being blessed, but we don't ever put who we're blessed by. Because we're so used to the idea that Jesus is so pervasive in our culture, Jesus is so pervasive in our world, that we're ready for him no matter what. Our job is not to be complacent little people sitting in chairs going, take us back. Our job is to be the soldiers on the front line, saving other people from Satan. We don't know when he's coming back. So you know what? If you don't know when your boss is coming back, you don't take a break. You keep working. If you don't know, if you're afraid you don't know exactly how you do it exactly how you were showed to do it. And for heaven's sake, if the creator of the universe says, bring my people home, you don't sit for 1 week, 1 hour every week in a building and feel like you got it covered. It's an every day, every minute, every person thing to get ready for Jesus coming back. And I think we've just gotten so easy in our lives that we no longer struggle to be ready for his return. We anticipate, we expect, I hate to say it, we feel like we're entitled to his return. It's not what Thessalonians tells us. Thessalonians says, wake up. Don't get comfortable. Be sober. Be the ones out there doing what you should be doing. Be ready. Because other people don't realize that Jesus is coming back, but we do. And it's time to get ready. Yesterday it was time to get ready, today it's time to get ready, and tomorrow it will be time to get ready. In case you were wondering, I just covered all time. So tomorrow when you wake up he said, well, today's the day I can get ready. You're right. And I said, yesterday was the day to get ready, and tomorrow's the day to get ready. So you can't get away from it. I'm smart that way sometimes. Because I want you guys to understand something. I am pained by some of the places I've been to in the past week and some of the people I've seen and the opportunities that I've lost. Because even though I say I'm ready, I'm not getting ready. I still live in my comfortable culture. The best thing we can understand is God is honest. He promises salvation through Jesus. He promises us a place in heaven. He promises us protection. He promises us provision. God is honest, and we can be secure in the honesty of his salvation. You see, there's a disconnect when we've been waiting for something for 2 millennia. But when you realize someone went to hell 5 minutes ago, I hope that makes it more urgent. For us, we need to know that part of the security of being God's is the fact that we are to share that security. The needs of the future have already been met for us. We don't have to worry about that. We can stand firm because the truth is always ours as long as we are Jesus Christ. And the fact is, as long as we understand the truth and faithfully propel ourselves into it, we are saved by the honesty of God. And so we are secure in him. The peace that we will have comes after we've prepared for coming battle. It comes after we've put on the right gear. It comes after we've mentally steeled ourselves for the time of lull that has crept upon us. It comes after we've woken up. We need to be doing preparedness drills. When's the last time you told somebody your testimony in Christ? I'm not asking you to go out and do a scary thing and talk to somebody you don't know. I'm saying, when's the last time you told your testimony to somebody you trust and you feel secure with? When's the last time you told somebody what Jesus really means to you? Preparedness drills. We might want to think about them. Because the truth of the matter is, when the security of his honesty becomes the promise of heaven, we need to be ready not just for us, but for others. And we need to get ready. Security only comes with practice. I know this because I have seen fire drills and tornado drills and earthquake drills. And when I was young, we did nuclear bomb drills. I have no idea how they thought us crawling under a desk was going to protect us from a nuclear bomb, but apparently there is something in an elementary school desk that will stop radiation. Now, I'm a little older than some people in here, but I know there's some people in here that are a little older than me that really remember when they'd set off sirens and you really had to crawl under your desk to get away from the bad H-bomb that was coming. Some people are looking at me going, what are you talking about? I'm telling you, it happened. You remember fire drills. Teachers hate them, just in case you were wondering. Because they're a huge block of time that we have to set aside. And all of a sudden, alarms go off. And kids, they know it's not a real thing. So they're like, hey, fire drill. But you have to do it because that kid that's kind of waving his arms like that, if there's a real fire, do you want him to die? No. Probably not. But you have to have them ready so they know they go to the door and they line up and they put their hands behind their back and we're going to this place. The new one in Oklahoma, earthquake drills. Who'd ever thunk that one? Tornado drills. We don't do these things so that kids are unsafe. Listen to me. We do these things so that kids know that we have provided for them, we have protected them, and we promise we will be there with them. Hey, does that sound familiar? The security of God that we should thank him for is found in who he is, in the fact that he is faithful to us in provision. He is there with us in protection, and he promises us in salvation. That's really what I got for you today. Because the security of God is massive. The security of God is not something I can talk about in a 20-minute, 30-minute process. But it is something we need to consider often. And if you're thinking, I already got the security of God down, I'm good with it, that's fantastic. I am happy. So during this invitation time, what I really want you to do is I want you to pray as hard as you can for somebody who doesn't know the security of God. If you got somebody that is just bound up in your mind as somebody who needs to know the security of God, then and you really love that person, grab somebody around you and ask them to pray for them too. Sharing in prayer in the Spirit is powerful. And I find we like to self-pray a whole lot more than we like to group pray. But I encourage you during this time of invitation, if you have somebody that truly and honestly is needing the security of God in their life, find somebody and pray for them. If you're somebody that needs Jesus today, come on up. We're happy to talk about that. If you need baptism, our baptistry is open. We can talk about that in a time that we can do that with you. It's open 24 hours, 7 days a week. I was even told by some people this week, I've got a key. I'll come do it for anybody anytime. And I'm all for that. If you don't have a key, you call me. I got a key. I know all the passcodes. Because the truth of the matter is, I believe in the security of Jesus Christ. I believe in the security of God. And I'm hoping to pass that on to you guys today so you can pass it on again and we can become prepared as we find peace in the promise.